Hey there, have you ever had a new manager come into your workplace and it seemed like from the moment they walked through the door, all they did was create chaos, making boneheaded changes that totally disrupted your workflow? With just a few exceptions, that has been my experience my entire work life. And I really thought that's what you'd have to do if you wanted to step into a leadership role. And I gotta tell you, I was wrong. In this video, I'm going to share 2 traps that new managers can easily fall into, and what I learned from the best manager that I've ever worked with. It all started when a career advisor challenged me to ditch my reluctant leader energy and step into a managerial role, one that would pay me more than my factory worker wage. And I gotta tell you, I resisted her suggestion, but she pushed me. And she challenged me in a way that I really wasn't ready for. It really made me feel uncomfortable. But you know what? I also felt seen. Finally, someone was seeing what I thought was my potential all along. So I applied for the job that she thought I had a good chance of getting. Well, I didn't get the job that was posted, but I did get a job within the same company at that same managerial level. And it was one that was much better suited for me because it was on the production line. My manager, the plant manager, he was a quiet, confident leader. And he was an excellent role model and guide for me. On my first day, I'm sitting in Brent's office and we're just chit-chatting. And he says, there's 2 things I want you to focus on for the first few weeks. The first thing is I want you to get to know your workers. I want you to see what they do. See how hard they work. And I want you to learn enough about running the various machines, the various work centers, to understand how the process works. But I do not, he emphasized this many times over the coming days, learn how to actually run the machines so that you could be a machine operator. He knew that for me to be successful, I needed to be managing from that 30,000-foot level. Not the 3-foot level. I needed to see how the pieces fit together and not be an expert on any one piece. That's what my team members were doing. That's what my work crew was doing. And this is where I noticed the first trap. The other production supervisor had worked for this company for 15 years. She started on the production floor and she cross-trained into multiple areas. She knew how to make rope. Yes, we made rope. Life safety rope, to be specific, for firefighters, for mountain climbers. So it was a critical job to make sure we did it right. So anyway, because she knew how to do the jobs, she led from that 3-foot level. If someone was on vacation or called out sick, she stepped in and filled that gap. So she served more as a floater than as a supervisor. And when you're an introvert and you get promoted, it's really easy to stay stuck at that 3-foot level because doing the work feels safer than leading the work, of managing the workflow, of moving people around to fill in those gaps. But here's the problem. You'll never learn to solve higher level problems because you'll always be focused on those lower level actions. So here's a tip for you. If you get promoted within your current company, be really careful of that trap. Intentionally set a period of time to learn your new role before you step in to help shore up the previous role. Otherwise, you'll never feel like you advanced at all. The other trap is when you step into a leadership role and you think that you need to start making changes right away to prove that you were the right person for the job. Now, there are 2 problems with this trap. First, even if you worked that position before, say you were one of 20 people doing the same job. I'm thinking insurance claims, I'm thinking the factory I worked at where we were all running similar machines. You may be a high performer at the worker bee level, and I mean no disrespect by that. I loved being a worker bee. You may have your processes down pat, but that doesn't mean that they will work for everyone. I know that sounds crazy, right? But people really do think and work differently. And so one of the best things to remember when you're learning to lead people is to remember that and adjust your actions, your requests accordingly. The second trap is that you don't know what you don't know. When I started that job at the rope company, of course I wanted to jump in and start fixing things fast, just to prove that I could handle the job. But I didn't know what needed to be fixed yet. And when you don't have that higher level understanding of how the pieces fit together, you might make a change down here that has a lasting impact over there. And that's why Brent's advice was so golden for me. But I have to tell you, those first few weeks, I felt like I wasn't contributing anything to the company. I was used to doing the work, not overseeing the work. Every day I walked the production floor and I talked to my workers, just like I had been instructed to do. I carried a clipboard and it felt more like a security blanket for me. And that actually became a running joke because I'd set it down somewhere and then I'd wander off. And my crew would spot it and they'd say, okay, Donna's around here somewhere. And when I wasn't wandering around the plant, I'd kind of collapse into my chair at my desk and I'd stare at the wall. And I would try to process what I was seeing and what I was learning because there was so much to it. And I really didn't feel like I was earning my paycheck. And I was convinced that the plant manager had made a mistake in hiring me. And I was even more certain that that career advisor had been wrong about me. What I didn't realize at the time was how much I was actually learning about the people that I was supervising. And the cool thing was they were learning about me too. They got to see me in all of my humanness as I was struggling to understand how and why they did things. But here's the beautiful thing, my goal was to understand. I wasn't trying to change things. I just wanted to know how things worked. And people love talking about the nitty-gritty details of what they were doing. And as they talked, I was taking notes, I was asking questions, and the light bulbs in my head, they were flashing like paparazzi's cameras at the Oscars. And you want to know what happened after about 2 or 3 weeks, that introductory period? I started feeling antsy. And while I knew that there was so much for me to still learn about making rope, my brain was already spotting inefficiencies because my questions came from the confusion that I was seeing out there on the floor. And also because, like most quiet people, I notice patterns, I notice inconsistencies that no one else was seeing. So I went to Brent, the plant manager, and I told him what I was learning and the ideas that I was already having to improve things. I was pretty excited. And he said, talk to your workers, see what they think. Now, any supervisor I had ever had in the past, they would just come over and say, these are the changes we're making, starting tomorrow, this is how we're going to do it. It wasn't just end of discussion. There was no discussion. But that's not how I wanted to operate. And it's not how my manager operated either. So I followed his guidance. I asked my team members for their ideas first. What do you think would make this easier? What's slowing you down? What have you noticed that isn't working? And sometimes they had suggestions, and we dug deeper into those. But sometimes they didn't. And when they didn't, that's when I introduced one of my ideas off of my clipboard. It was not as a demand. It was not a, you will do this. It wasn't a decree, but it was a conversation. Here's something that I've been thinking about, something that I noticed. Would you be open to giving it a try this way? And if it doesn't make things better or easier, we can always go back to the way that it was. I realized later, I think it's that one sentence, we can always go back. I think that seemed to reduce the fears that come with change. And here's why that works. Because psychological safety unlocks contribution. And people with quiet natures like us, we're good at creating psychological safety because we listen. And I didn't know how the nervous system worked back then, but now I realize that by asking and letting them know that the suggested change was not a done deal, I gave them space to think about the change I suggested before we implemented it, and then we had more conversations. It created that feeling of safety. So today, as I talk about stepping into a more visible leadership role, if you're shaking your head and you're thinking, no way, that's not me, I want you to ask yourself something. Why are you still watching? Because there's a reason. And give yourself time to process the idea that there may be more leadership potential in you than you're willing to admit. And if you want to get that next promotion, here's a tip that will help you get ready for it. Start paying attention to what your manager does. Not from the critical, they aren't doing anything right type of thing, but what is their actual role? Start asking them questions. Find out how what you do impacts the people around you. When I worked as a machine operator, there were 3 work areas that I cared about most. The area that fed me, my own work area, and the area that I fed work to. That's looking at like a 10,000 foot view, and then expand it even further. The kind of like the great-great-grandparents, look back even further. Look down into the future generations. How does what you do impact? That's when you can start to see where the bottlenecks are, where improvements need to be made. And understanding this before you apply for that promotion is going to help you during the interview process. And it's also going to help you get your footing during your first few weeks in a new role. Listen, learn, observe, discuss, and then make changes that make sense to you and the people around you that those changes are going to affect. The people above, the people below, and the people beyond. Shifting your focus like this is not going to just help you become a better employee at your current level, but it's also going to help you become that quiet, confident leader that you know yourself to be. If you like this video, be sure to continue your quiet leader evolution with me by hitting that subscribe button and checking out this video that YouTube thinks that you'll like. I'll see you there.